Hello, dear students. So, this is the 11th lecture on William Shakespeare's The Tragedy of Macbeth. And in this lecture, we will cover Act 4, or at least a section of it. Now, the first scene of Act 4 is popularly known as the Cauldron Scene. And it is one of the most important turning points for the entire play. So, without further ado, let's go into the text. A house in forest, in the middle a boiling cauldron. So the house in forest is actually the site of darkness that prevails throughout the play of Macbeth. And in thunder entered the three witches. First witch, thrice the blinded cat had mewed. So Grey Malkin is the blinded cat that we are talking about over here. Thrice and once the hedge pig had whined. So look, thrice and once means 4 times. Harpier cries, "'Tis time, 'tis time." So what happens over here is that we for the first time know that Harpier is the name of the third witch's familiar, which is the hedgehog. Now, very interestingly, look how many times there is an animal's cry in this entire scene. And if you count them thrice, thrice plus once, that is 3 plus 3 plus 4, that is 7, and plus 1, that is Harpier crying. So there is crying 8 times of animals. Now 8 is a very significant number. Like if you look at how it's placed, you'll see that it's almost like the vertical version of an infinity sign. So 8 looks like two worlds that are touching each other but not quite converging. And here we find that the world of antithesis, where the witches reside, and the world of thesis, where Macbeth resides, come together. They are touching each other. And look, they say, "'Tis time, 'tis time." The first witch says, "Round about the cauldron go, in the poisoned entrails throw. Toad that under cold stone, days and nights had 31. Sweltered venom sleeping got, boil thou first in the charmed pot." So they are now using animals or animal parts to conjure up something unnatural. They're trying to conjure up their own concoction of devilry. So the first ingredient is a toad that had been sleeping under a stone for 31 days. Double, double toil and trouble, fire burn and cauldron bubble. Now this is very interesting because Macbeth's toil and troubles shall become double and double. So the imagery that he used of doubling and redoubling of the cannonade in Act 1, Scene 2 is being repeated over here in Act 4, Scene 1, where we see that there is double, double toil and trouble. Fillet of a finny snake, in the cauldron boil and bake, eye of newt and toe of frog, wool of bat and tongue of dog, adder's fork and lineworm's sting, lizard's leg and howlet's wing, for a charm of powerful trouble, like a hell broth boil and bubble. So look, once again we have different animal parts, and now none of these animals are very household names, except for a dog whose tongue is cut out. So all the animals and their vital parts, they are as if being used to concoct. The natural elements are being used to concoct something very, very unnatural. Now this is very interesting to note because in the Elizabethan age, magic became a very important issue. And you see, King James himself, in whose era this play was written, was deeply interested in magic and in the study of demons and witches. He wrote a book called Demonology, where he spoke about witches, magic, and such demonic functions which took place during his time. Now, you must understand that the Elizabethan Preoccupation with magic was not an isolated incident, but rather it was very soundly based in the thought of the time. Because in the Renaissance, we have magicians or scholars of the supernatural or preternatural arts like John Dee, like Cornelius Agrippa, who were students of physics and of chemistry. And primarily, these people were called alchemists back then. Even we have an earlier figure in Roger Bacon. So, with such names coming to the forefront, magic became a very important part. Now, magic has a long lasting impact on all of Elizabethan uh, literature, especially in Shakespeare, where we find that magic has a recurrent function. If you look at Macbeth, there is magic. If you look at Midsummer Night's Dream, there is magic. If you look at The Tempest, there is magic. So, magic is a recurrent theme in the Elizabethan domain of drama, and especially in Shakespeare. So, we have magic in one of the early comedies, A Midsummer Night's Dream. We have magic in one of Shakespeare's greatest tragedies, that is Macbeth. We have magic in one of Shakespeare's last plays, which is The Tempest. So you see, magic plays a very major role in the Shakespearean canon. However, I would not go further into speaking about magic. Uh, if any of you are interested, I once presented a paper on Shakespearean theatre and magic itself. So we can talk about that later if we have time after finishing the course on Macbeth. Also, I would love to have a class on the witches, who were they, and how can we locate them outside the magical paradigm of the Elizabethan age. Also, another class I would love to take if I have the time on the post-humanist approach to Shakespeare's Macbeth, especially from the perspective of animal studies. Because you see, animals play a very major role in the course of Macbeth itself and also in his other plays. And I don't know if you have noticed it or not, but whenever there is some form of calamity, just preceding that, animals play a very major role. So once again, we have the refrain: double, double, toil and trouble, fire burn and cauldron bubble. Scale of dragon, tooth of wolf, witch's mummy, maw and gull, of the ravine salt sea shark, root of hemlock digged in the dark, liver of blaspheming Jew, gall of goat and slips of yew, silvered in the moon's eclipse, nose of Turk and Tartar slips, finger of birth strangled babe, ditch delivered by a drab, make the gruel thick and slab, and thereto a tiger's shot drawn for the ingredients of our cauldron. Now, in this single speech, there are references to many of Shakespeare's own writings. For instance, when we hear about uh, liver of blaspheming Jew, we are at once reminded of Merchant of Venice. When we hear about nose of Tark and Tartar slips, we can think of Christopher Marlowe's Tamburlaine the Great, and also of Shakespeare's Troilus and the Rape of Lucrece. We can think of that as well. That imagery is retained over here. Uh, Finger of birth strangled babe, each delivered by a drab, is a very poignant reference to Shakespeare's own times when heir, the issue of being an heir, was a predominant one, a predominantly problematic one. So here we have many references, and remember, "Finger of a Birth Strangled Babe" is also takes us back to Act One, Scene 3, where the witch was talking about a pilot's thumb. So such natural ingredients turned into something unnatural is very common throughout the scope of Shakespeare's Macbeth. Double, double, toil and trouble, fire burn and cauldron bubble, cool it with a baboon's blood, then the churn is firm and good. Enter Hecate and all the other three witches. Oh, well done, I commend your pains, and everyone shall share in the gains. And now about the cauldron sing, like elves and fairies in a ring, enchanting all that you put in. So music and song, black spirits, etc., exeunt Hecate and the three witches. Second witch, by the pricking of my thumb, something wicked this way comes. Now, when the second witch says something wicked this way comes, she does not mean it very literally. For a witch, something wicked is perhaps a compliment, which she gives to Macbeth. Open locks, whoever knocks. Enter Macbeth. How now, you secret black and midnight hags? What is it you do? A deed without a name. Now remember in Act 3, Scene 3, Macbeth himself said when he was about to murder Banquo, he said a deed of dreadful note. And similarly here, they are talking about a deed without a name. So the references are very much there throughout the entire scope of the play. I conjure you by that which you profess, however you come to know it, answer me. Though you untie the winds and let them fight against the churches, though the yeasty waves confound and swallow navigation up, though bladed corn be lodged and trees blown down, though castles topple on their warders' heads, though palaces and pyramids do slope their heads to their foundations, though the treasures of Nietzsche's Germans tumble altogether, even till destruction sicken, answer me to what I ask you. Now remember, Macbeth has already said, let the frame of things disjoin. And since for him all the frame of things have disjointed, so his mortal existence and the mortal existence of all around him does not matter any longer to him. And therefore, for Macbeth, now the more important thing is knowing his destiny, of interpreting his destiny. Now, here, we have a deep similarity between Macbeth and King Oedipus, and a deep dissimilarity between Macbeth and the King Oedipus. When Oedipus Rex begins, we see that Oedipus has sent his one of his courtiers to know about the prophecy regarding the plague. Now, quite like Oedipus had sought out the oracle, Macbeth also seeks out the witches twice. But whereas Oedipus was not very interested to know that what was the actual interpretation of the oracle's message, Macbeth, on the other hand, is too eager to know what does the message of the witches, what does the prophecies of the witch, what do the prophecies of the witches entail. So there is a similarity as well as a dissimilarity. And look, the witches say, speak, demand, will answer. Say, if thou wouldst rather hear it from our mouths or from our masters. And Macbeth, who has always sought authority, would obviously ask from the masters. And he says, call him, let me see him. Pour in so's blood that had eaten her 9 farrow, grease that's sweaten from a murderer's gibbet, throw into the flame. So a mother pig who has eaten up her 9 children. Now you see these numbers, 7, 8, 9, these are very important numbers because 7 and 9 are occult numbers. And they often occur throughout many of the texts that you will read in your entire English literature course, because they are considered to be occult numbers and they are always associated with occult happenings. So, come high or low, thyself and office deftly show. Thunder, first apparition, an armed head. Tell me, thou unknown power. So Macbeth wants to address it directly. So it's an armed head. Hear he knows thy thought, hear his speech, but say thou not. So do not say anything to it. It knows what is going on in your head and it will answer accordingly. Macbeth, 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 beware Macduff, beware the Thane of Fife, dismiss me enough. Now, look, the armed head, excuse me, coincidentally, it is very interesting to note that each of the apparitions, the way that they look, corresponds to the danger that they represent. So Macduff will be the armed head that will slaughter Macbeth's head, that will shave off Macbeth's head from his own body. Similarly, here he says, beware Macduff, beware the Thane of Fife, dismiss me enough. He sends, Macbeth, whatever thou art, for thy good caution thanks. Thou hast halved my fear aright, but one word more. And look, the witches say that he will not be commanded. Here's another more potent than the first. Thunder's second apparition, a bloody child. The bloody child is perhaps Malcolm himself, who has who is the child of the true king and who has been made bloody by Macbeth himself. Or perhaps the bloody child is Cleance, whose father has also been made bloody by Macbeth. Macbeth, 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 had I 3 years, I'd hear thee. You see, here this is very interesting because even in our own Indian mythology, we have the reference to gods and goddesses and demons with many heads and many ears. And sometimes it is said that whenever some gods were asked to speak about the entire creation, they would emerge with multiple heads so that their mouths could speak simultaneously about the creation in proper terms. Be bloody, bold, and resolute, laugh to scorn the power of man, for none of woman born shall harm Macbeth. Now, none of woman born is a very interesting way of putting it because you see, back in those days, caesarean babies were not a very common thing and normal deliveries usually happened. Now, when there were complications, sometimes the mother's life was endangered and the child was ripped off from the mother's womb. And that was considered to be an unnatural birth. So now Macbeth says, then live, Macduff, what need I fear of thee? But yet I'll make assurance double sure, and take a bond of fate, thou shalt not live, that I may tell pale hearted fear it lies, and sleep in spite of thunder. So you see now Macbeth's resolution. Thunder is his resolution. And this resolution comes to pester him in his deepest moments through fears. So Macbeth is in many ways a tragedy of fears. Thunder, third apparition, a child crowned with a tree in his hand. This is Malcolm. The earlier one could have been Macduff as well, the bloody child ripped off from his mother's womb unnaturally before time. What is this that rises like the issue of a king and wears upon his baby brow the round and top of sovereignty? So, the third apparition is a child crowned. This is the actual Prince of Cumberland, Malcolm, the representative of. And this child having a tree in his hand is representative of Burnham Wood coming to Dunsany. Listen but speak not to it. Be lion mettled, proud, and take no care who shapes, who frets, or where conspirers are. Macbeth shall never vanquished be until great Burnham Wood to Dunsany Hill shall come against him. Now Macbeth takes this proposition or this prophecy very literally. It's natural that woods do not move on themselves, but it was a common military ploy back then to use foliage to camouflage own number of army, one's own number of fighters. So that was a very common ploy back in those days. And Macbeth, being a great, worthy military general at the core of his heart, should have known it. But he simply takes these uh, prophecies, these warnings, in a very literal sense. That will never be who can impress the forest, bid the tree unfix his earthbound root, sweet bodements good. Rebellious dead rise never till the wood of Burnham rise, and our high placed Macbeth shall live the lease of nature, pay his breath to time and mortal custom. So Macbeth says that since this is not going to happen, so it is very natural that I'll live my life fully, and when my time comes through old age, then only I'll die. Yet my heart throbs to know one thing. Tell me, if your art can tell so much, shall Banquo's issue ever reign in this kingdom? So still that longing problem in Macbeth's own mind pesters him. Seek to know no more. I will be satisfied. Deny me this, and an eternal curse fall on you. Let me know why sinks that cauldron and what noise is this? So there are oboes at the background, and Macbeth says that let me know at least this whether Banquo's issues shall be kings or not. And the witches say, show, 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 show his eyes and grieve his heart, come like shadows, so depart. So sleep shall neither night nor day, hang about his penthouse lid, he shall live a man forbid. 7 days, 9 times 9, shall he dwindle, pick and pine, though his bark cannot be lost, yet it shall be tempest tossed. And that premonition now comes fulfilled for Macbeth himself. A show of 8 kings, the last with a glass in his hand, Banquo following. Now, over here, this is very interesting to note that King James hails from the Stuart dynasty, and it is believed that the Stuart dynasty began with a certain mythical fleance. And Macbeth, since he is, Shakespeare, since he is writing in the time of King James, this is an eulogy to the king, and therefore he shows, "Thou art too like the spirit of Banquo, down, thy crown does sear my 9 walls, and thy hair, thou other gold-bound brow, is like the first, a third is like the former, filthy hags, why do you show me this? A fourth, start eyes, what? Will the line stretch out to the crack of doom? Another yet, a seventh, I'll see no more, and yet the eighth appears who bears a glass which shows me many more, and some I see that twofold balls and treble sceptres carry. Horrible sight, now I see 'tis true, for the blood-bolted Banquo smiles upon me, and points at them for his. What is this so? So now the witches show him a parade of 8 successive kings, and one of them holds a glass in which Macbeth sees many more. And some of them, like King James, who was the king of Scotland and England as well, so they have treble scepters. Treble means triple scepters. That is basically triple scepters refers to the three. Uh, each scepter or a stick or cane was representative of one kingdom, the power over one kingdom, the sovereignty over one kingdom. So some having treble scepters means England, Scotland, Ireland. So there is a reference to multiple kings having dominion over these 3 realms. Aye, sir, all this is so, but why stands Macbeth thus amazedly? Come, sisters, cheer we up his spirits, and show the best of our delights. I'll charm the air to give a sound, while you perform your antic round, that this great king may kindly say, our duties did he, our duties did welcome his pay. So now they try to cheer up, so they dance and vanish, and Macbeth is still dissatisfied. And he says, where are they gone? Let this pernicious hour stand I accursed in the calendar. Come in without there. So somebody is knocking at the door. Somebody is there at the door. And he says that come inside. What's your grace's will? Lennox says. And Macbeth says, saw you the weird sisters? No, my lord. Came they not by you? No, indeed, my lord. So they have vanished. And Macbeth thinks that they are something corporeal. So Macbeth still denies their existence as supernatural beings, but still believes in them. So you see, Macbeth is in that mental disposition where he is willing to accept anything which is conducive to his own thoughts. Whatever is conducive to his own plans, Macbeth is more than eager to accept it. But whatever goes against his plans, Macbeth is not very willing to even consider it at all. So, infected be the air whereon they ride, and damn all those that trust them. But Macbeth fails to understand that this warning includes him as well, because he too trusts them, and therefore is doomed to be damned. I did hear the galloping of horse. Who was it came by? 'Tis 2 or 3, my lord, that bring you word Macduff is fled to England. Fled to England? Ay, my good lord. And then he goes on in an aside. I have already told you what is an aside, so I am not repeating myself. Time thou anticipatest my dread exploits. The flighty purpose never is overtook, unless the deed go with it. From this moment, the very firstlings of my heart shall be the firstlings of my hand. So up till now, Macbeth suggested that the false face doth hide what the false heart doth know. But now he says that I'll be resolute from now on. So whatever is in my hand, that shall be there in whatever is in my heart, that shall be there in my action as well. So my actions and my thoughts shall be synchronized from now on, and I shall not flinch at any cost. And even now, to crown my thoughts with acts, be it thought and done, the castle of Macduff I will surprise, seize upon 5, give to the edge of the sword his wife, his babies, and all unfortunate souls that trace him in his line. No boasting like a fool, this did I'll do before this purpose cool, but no more sights. Where are these gentlemen? Come, bring me where they are. So Macbeth now pledges to murder Banquo's entire family because he says that I'll purge the land of him. So he wishes to eradicate anybody who stands in his way. Then in scene 2, we see 5, a room in Macduff's castle. Enter Lady Macduff, her son, and Ross. What had he done to make him fly the land? So Lady Macduff now doubts her husband that what he what has he done actually to have to flee the land? And Ross says, "You must have patience, madam." He had none. His flight was madness. When our actions do not, our fears do make us traitors. So Macduff has anticipated that Macbeth might go after him. But in his action of fleeing the land, he is actually become a traitor to Macbeth. Otherwise, Macbeth would have doubted him, but now Macbeth is sure that Macduff is against him. You know not whether it was his wisdom or his fear. But Ross says that Macduff is not afraid of anybody, rather, it is his wisdom which propelled him to escape the land in due time. Because since he escaped the land, he will still survive and he can parlay with the other people who are trying to fight for the cause of the land, to gain back the land for its rightful heir. Wisdom to leave his wife, to leave his babies, his mansion and his titles in a place from whence he does fly. He loves us not, he wants the natural touch. That is, he lacks the natural touch. For the poor rain, the most diminutive of birds, will fight her young ones in her nest against the owl. All is the fear and nothing is the love. As little is the wisdom where the flight so runs against all reason. So she accuses him of not loving her properly because she says that if he had even an iota of love for us, then he wouldn't have escaped. He would have stayed and he would have protected his land, his title, his family, and so on and so forth. Because even the smallest of the birds, they protect their nests against the predatory birds like owls as well. So even if Macbeth is a predator right now, Macduff should have stayed back and should have taken care of his family, should have protected them from the onslaughts of Macbeth rather than escaping. Ross, my dearest cause, his cousin, I pray you, school yourself, that is, properly educate yourself. For your husband, he is noble, wise, judicious, and best knows the fits of the season. So your husband can understand the problems which are going on in the country, and he can quite easily fathom the wavelengths of trouble that are brewing in the country, and therefore it is very natural that he has escaped. I dare not speak much further, but cruel are the times when we are traitors and do not know ourselves, when we hold rumour from what we fear, yet know not what we fear, but float upon a wild and violent sea, each way and move. I take my leave of you, shall not be long, but I'll be here again. Things at the worst will cease, or else climb upward to what they were before, my pretty cousin blessing upon you. So he says that these are very volatile times, and we are traitors without knowing it. Because we stand for the good of the country, we stand for the good of the land, we have become traitors. Now you see, being loyal to your land does not always mean being loyal to your government, no matter whether it's monarchy or whether it's uh, democracy. Being loyal to your land does not always mean being loyal to your government. These are two very different things. And therefore, Ross quite correctly points out that uh, they have turned uh, into traitors without knowing what their treason is. Because all they are trying to do is to protect their land from the onslaughts of Macbeth himself. Fathered he is, and yet he is fatherless. So, look, this is a very interesting way of uh, putting things because Lady Macbeth says that he is fathered by this land, but yet today he is fatherless because the land has turned against him. And by this land, he means the monarch. I am so much a fool, should I stay longer? It would be my disgrace and your discomfort. I take my leave at once. So he leaves. Lady Macbeth, Sirrah, with worms, Sirrah, your father's dead. And what will you do now? How will you live? So now she addresses her son and says that, imagine your father is dead, and how will you live right now? As birds do, mother. What? With worms and flies. So you would eat worms and flies to survive. So sustenance, desire to live, the desire to survive, the survival instinct immediately kicks in Junior Macduff. Lady Macduff, poor bird, thou'dst never fear the net, nor line, the pitfall, nor the gin. Why should I, mother? Poor birds they are not set for. My father is not dead, for all your saying. So he says that I am a little bird and nobody is worried about me. The traps are for the big birds, and my father is not dead, I do not believe it. Yes, he is dead. How wilt thou do for a father? Nay, how will you do for a husband? So this child is a bit cocky, and therefore he keeps on talking to his mother in these terms. Why, I can buy me 20 at any month, but I don't want to sell again. So he also knows that his mother loves his father very dearly, and she cannot quite do away with him. Thou speakest with all thy wit, and yet in faith with wit enough for thee. So you speak with all your thoughts and your wit, but this wit is really advanced for your age. Was my father a traitor, mother? Ay, that he was. What is a traitor? Why, one that swears and lies? And be all traitors that do so. Every one that does so is a traitor and must be hanged. Every one. Who must hang them? Why, the honest man. Then the liars and swearers are fools, for there are liars and swearers enough to beat the honest men and hang them up. You see, these discussions are so very potent throughout the times. In any age, wherever there is dictatorship, wherever there is misuse of power, in any form of governance, I think the government should read these lines. The people should read these lines. And these lines become a very potent reminder of how the good, the concept of goodness and ethics have been mutilated throughout history. Now, you see, there is one philosopher whose name is Frederick Nietzsche. Friedrich Nietzsche argues in the same line. He says that the Christian morality has made men weaker. And Shakespeare also argues in the similar line. Nietzsche comes way after Shakespeare. You see, Shakespeare already has anticipated what Nietzsche had to say. Now, God help thee, poor monkey, but how wilt thou do for a father? If he were dead, you would weep for him. If you would not, it were a good sign that I should quickly have a new father. Poor prattler, how thou talkest. So look, he is analyzing his surroundings and he's analyzing the people's behaviors. Now, there was a scholar whose name was Desiderius Erasmus, and Erasmus often used a ploy of teaching, which was very interesting. He would ask his students to open a window and look at the surroundings for 30 seconds. Then he would close the window and ask his students to enumerate whatever they have seen from left to right or from right to left. And they would start on enumerating what they have seen in those 30 seconds. And each day he would lessen the time and he would keep on asking them that what they have seen. Now these are small tasks which kind of help us grow our observation powers. And here we see that this child has a brilliant observation power. Enter a messenger, blaze thou fair dame, I am not to you known, though in your state of honor I am perfect. I doubt some danger does approach you nearly. If you will take a homely man's advice, be not found here. Hence with your little ones, to fright you thus methinks I am too savage. To do worse to you were fell cruelty, which is too nigh your person. Heaven preserve you, I dare abide no longer. So a messenger comes and warns him that there is some impending doom coming your way, and you should immediately escape. Whither should I fly? I have done no harm. But I remember now I am in this earthly world where to do harm is often laudable. To do good sometimes accounted dangerous folly. Why then, alas, do I put up that womanly defense to say I have done no harm? What are these faces? So the murderers have already entered. And she is ruminating whether she has done any harm or not, but then she realizes that in this world fair is foul and foul is fair, and therefore the innocent must die. Where is your husband? I hope in no place so unsanctified where such as thou mayst find him. He is a traitor, thou liest, thou shack-haired villain. And then comes Macbeth's son, and the murderer says, "What, you egg?" And he stabs him. Young fry of treachery. And the son dies. He has killed me, mother. He dies. Run away, I pray you. Exit Lady Macduff, crying murder, and Macbeth is a very gory play. There's a lot of bloodshed in the entire scope of the play itself. And the thing is that Shakespeare deliberately keeps it gory at places to bring us to the realization that Macbeth shall live as a man forbid. He is a villain hero. When Aristotle talked about the tragic hero, he said that the tragic hero should not be a very good person, because when such a person goes from good fortune to bad fortune, the people will think that if I do too much good, then I'll have the same results. And if it's a really bad person, then his journey from good fortune to bad fortune would be justified. There would be no tragedy. So the person must be neither too good nor too bad. Now, these are two extremes, and in between them is a limbo. Now, Aristotle leaves this entire space for the playwright to locate his character. Now, some playwrights might locate the person over here that is tending towards very much good and very little evil, or he can locate him here that is tending towards too much evil with very little good. So therein lies the dramatist's freedom, the dramatist's license of portraying the character. So, with this, we end this lecture. Thank you so much for patiently listening and hope to see you very soon with another lecture. So, goodbye. Have a good day.